Hi, I'm Eric with Simply Elegant Home Cooking, and today I'm going to share with you one of my favorite recipes. We're going to be doing a New York strip steak with garlic thyme butter cooked in a cast iron skillet. This recipe is very easy, and you'll be able to replicate steakhouse quality results in your own home kitchen, so stick around and I'll show you how it's done. One of the most important steps in cooking a steak on your stovetop is to make sure that you take the steak out with enough time to come up to room temperature before you cook it. I've taken this steak out a full hour ahead of the cooking time. I know that might sound like a really long time, but if you take it out only 20-30 minutes ahead of time, it's really not going to have enough time to come up to temperature. So what you want to do is you want to take it out an hour ahead of time, and you want to make sure to blot it as dry as you can with some paper towels. There's not much moisture left. I already did this when I took it out of the refrigerator, but I'm going to do it again just to make sure there is as little moisture as possible. The more moisture you have, the harder it's going to be to get a good sear. So you want to blot this on all sides. Get it nice and dry. And once your steak is nice and dry, you just want to season it. Now I only use kosher salt and cracked black pepper. What you want to do is you want to go on there with a pretty generous coating. And I like to use kosher salt or, coarser salt grains. You don't want to use really fine sea salt with this. You want it to really stick on there. So hit it with the salt and then some cracked black pepper. This is cracked at a medium grind. You don't want it too fine or it can actually burn up in the pan. We're going to be cooking with a pretty high heat. So you want to make sure that you have some actual coarser grains. Use your hands and just kind of spread that out. And we'll hit the other side. Just be sure to hit the sides too. Usually what I do is I just go like that to mop up all of those pieces of salt and pepper. This is ready to go. It just needs a few more minutes to sit out. Now's a good time to preheat our cast iron skillet. So I'm going to turn the burner on to medium-high heat, and we're going to give this a good 5 minutes to come up to full heat. You want to make sure that the pan is super hot when you put the steak on. Now I'm using cast iron. You could also use stainless steel. You just don't want to use non-stick. You won't get a good sear with a non-stick skillet. And while we wait on that skillet to come up to temperature, I'm going to go over the rest of the ingredients. So we're going to be doing a garlic thyme butter baste towards the end of the cooking. I have about 2 tablespoons of butter cut up into pieces. I have a handful of thyme. I like to use a lot of the thyme. I really like the flavor that adds. I've cut them in half just to make it a little easier to deal with in the pan. And I have 2 garlic cloves. So I don't take the time to peel. All I do is I take a hammer and I hit them like this. And all that's going to do is it's going to break them up and allow those oils to come out and really impart that garlic flavor into the final cooking result. You're also going to want to use olive oil or any other neutral flavored oil. Now you'll notice that the olive oil that I use says extra light on the bottle. That's important. You don't want a heavy olive flavor when you're cooking a steak. The flavor is not going to go with the flavor profile of the steak, and it's also not going to have a high smoke point. So the extra light olive oils have a high smoke point and they're suitable for cooking over a medium-high heat. We're not going to do the butter basting until the end with the lower heat, so we're going to start with this, and that olive oil in the pan is going to prevent us from burning the butter towards the end when we go to baste the steak. So our pan's fully come up to temperature. You can probably see a little bit of smoke coming off the pan. That's how you want it to look. Now we haven't added oil. You want to make sure that you wait until you're about to put the steak on to add the oil to prevent from burning. So I'm going to go in with just a very small amount of oil. That's all you need for this. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to sear the fat cap. So you want to make sure you hear that sizzle sound when you put the steak in. We're going to cook this for about a minute, and then we're going to cook the main sides. So we've now been cooking for a little bit more than a minute. That should be plenty of time to render that fat cap. At this point, you want to lay the steak down on its side. And we're going to let this go for 3 minutes and 45 seconds. You don't want to touch it, flip it, or move it at all. We're going to let it just sit there for 3 minutes 45 seconds and get a good sear. That's going to get it a nice crispy crust on the exterior of the steak. So we've been going for 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It's time to turn the steak. And that's how you want it to look. You want it to be nice and crispy. That's going to be a lot of flavor there. So we're going to flip that over and let it go another 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So we've been going for about 3 minutes now on this side, and I'm going to just test the steak. That feels done to me, so I don't want to overcook it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to render this other side for a moment or two, the one that we didn't hit yet, and I'm going to turn the heat down to medium-low. We're going to just give that a minute or two to reduce in heat, and once we've had enough time for the pan to come down in temperature, we'll add our butter, garlic, and thyme. So a minute later, our pan's had enough time to come down in temperature. Just going to flip that back on its side. And we're going to go in with our aromatics. And what you want to do, you want to tilt the pan on its side and just baste the steak with that butter. Kind of move it around as you go. That's going to impart just a really rich flavor on the steak. We're not really trying to cook it at this point. All we want to do is spoon that butter mixture over the whole steak. And once you hit that side nicely, what you want to do is scrape that off. Give the steak a flip. And we're going to hit that other side too. Just coating the whole surface. And one last flip. Hit it again. So after about a minute or two of the basting, you can turn the heat off, and we're ready to take this off the heat. So what you want to do is you just want to take your steak and lay it on some aluminum foil. And you want to get about 1 or 2 spoonfuls of the butter. Just kind of ladle that over top. And then you want to close the foil around the steak to maintain the temperature. And what you want to do is you want to sit this out for a full 10 minutes. You want to leave it covered for 10 minutes before you touch it or cut into it or do anything to it. We're just going to let it sit there. So we've now been sitting for a full 10 minutes. Do not skimp on the 10-minute resting time. We're going to peel that away. And we're ready to carve this up. I usually start by giving it a nice cut through the center. You can see that turned out absolutely perfectly. And then you want to just cut these into thick strips. You don't want to cut them too thin, or it's going to lose all of that moisture. It's going to lose too much of the juices. We're ready to serve this up. I really hope you enjoyed this video. It's really easy to get a steakhouse quality result in your own home, in your own kitchen. So please be sure to give this recipe a try. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Eric with Simply Elegant Home Cooking, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.